Perhaps the Canada-U.S. relationship giving anyone else whiplash, or is it just me? After months coming, after this country's economy and sovereignty were targeted with ever-escalating threats and tariffs, Trump seems to change his tune today after his first phone call with Mark Carney serving in his capacity as Prime Minister. You heard from Carney, you heard from Trump. Here's how Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh are reacting.
I was glad to learn that the President and Prime Minister spoke today, and like all Canadians, I hope they had a successful talk, and I look forward to hearing about the results that they achieved in that conversation.
I want this call to be successful. Like I said before, there are many things I'm going to attack Mark Carney on when it comes to domestic policy, but when it comes to our fight against Donald Trump, we all need to be united.
All right, what to make of the about-face, and does it make a dent in the campaign? Let's talk about that with our front bench tonight. Muhammad Ali is a former Liberal staffer. He now works as a vice president at Crestview Strategy. Anthony Kosh is a Conservative strategist and managing principal at AK Strategies. He previously served as national campaign spokesperson and director of communications to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. And Alison Gifford worked in former NDP leader Jack Layton's office. She's now the vice president of policy and public affairs at Clear Strategy. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday evening. Thanks for sharing it with us and Canadians watching. Alison, I have to start with you. We were just saying whiplash, and I was saying, yeah, it's even in my introduction, right? This is a change from the kind of rhetoric that's being employed by Donald Trump, but it's Donald Trump. How much do you read into it?
I think it's actually quite good. We started to see a few backups or new tariff initiatives that have been a little bit more focused on the USMCA as a benchmark. So even the auto tariffs, if there's over 50% U.S. content, aren't subject to the tariffs. And you also saw the carve out for USMCA qualifying goods in the last round of tariffs and Trump's retreat. So to me, that's a bit of a sign that with Jamieson Greer in USTR now, he is bringing a bit more of a rules-based approach and a bit more of an industry-based and sector-based approach to what they're doing. So on the high level, yeah, tariffs aren't great, but at least we're starting to see a little bit of law and order come into play. So I think that's promising.
Beyond, though, I think like the tangible stuff around tariffs, Anthony, the real difference today was it wasn't a tweet or a post on social media calling him the governor or saying we should become the 51st state or, you know, disparaging essentially Canada's economy and its contributions or the trading relationships. Like it was not negative. And I'm not saying it's necessarily positive, but it just wasn't what we were used to. What do you read into that?
Yeah, well, I agree with Mr. Singh and Mr. Poilievre in that any positive interaction with the President of the United States is a positive thing. All I'd say is I think this speaks much more to just how much Canadians' expectations have declined. The fact that the President of the United States of America calling our Prime Minister by his proper title is seen as something extraordinary and positive just goes to show you how bad things have really gotten. But I think at the end of the day, you have to ask the question, what has really changed here? A phone call was had today after it seems now Mr. Carney had requested a phone call a few weeks ago, didn't even get an answer until now. But if you're an auto worker and you're worried about whether or not you're going to have a job in a month, does this phone call do anything for you? If you're a business owner, Canadian or otherwise, who's considering or looking at making a strategic investment in some capacity in the Canadian economy, does this do anything for you in giving you certainty in terms of whether or not you should pursue that decision? Does anything really change? If you're part of one of the sectors of the economy that's likely going to be impacted by the next wave of tariffs that's implemented on April 2nd, does this actually do anything for you? So always important to be reasonably optimistic. I think it's important for all of us, especially in these times. But I also think it is important to recognize that not much has actually really changed beyond the President of the United States finally giving the Prime Minister of Canada the respect of giving him his actual work title.
I think Anthony's comments kind of ground the reality, Mohammed, insofar as, yes, there's a comment that isn't negative out there, but ultimately he's still talking about Liberation Day in the same, run-on sentence in which he complimented for the first time in a long time anything to do with Canada. Like he's still saying that next week all of these tariffs, and I can't even keep track of them because the border ones are supposed to come next week after 2 months of delays, reciprocal tariffs, hence Liberation Day, and the auto tariffs. And when those are actually applied, if they are actually applied, I feel like probably Canadians will feel, a little bit like this is square one again.
I think, to both my colleagues on this panel, I think, yeah, it's good there was a positive call, and should we feel too optimistic? Probably not, because I think Donald Trump has proven that you can change your mind on a whim. But I think a positive call. I think the fact that they have committed to engaging into a security and economic cooperation agreement following the election is a positive sign that, like, look, we need to figure something out that's much more sustainable. He could have easily have just said, to hell with you, we're still going to go tariffs, still want to take over Canada and so forth. And he didn't go that far. He didn't use that opportunity to try and embarrass Mark Carney. He found him to be a formidable statesman to engage with. So I think that's a positive, that like this meeting went as good as possible for Mark Carney and the Liberals. And I think that if folks are trying to look for some glimmer of hope, I think the glimmer of hope is that there's an expectation set of negotiations to start on economic and military pieces, which has been a fundamental cornerstone of the relationship, but also that there wasn't this sort of extreme negative or extreme, like, actually we're going to triple tariffs on you, as Donald Trump has been threatening for the last however many weeks if you want to go on for.
I want to do a quick round on the politics of it, because Mohammed alluded to it. Mark Carney has the ability right now to use during an election campaign, like Doug Ford did in Ontario, Allison, the pulpit of the prime minister, right? He has an advantage just inherent to that. I'm not saying that as a political statement. Like, he is able to engage, for example, in this instance with Donald Trump, to talk about negotiations, for example, in a way that people who don't hold power can't. How much of a challenge is that in your case, for example, for the NDP?
I think it's an incredible challenge for the NDP. I think that as long as the NDP tries to compete with Carney on the economic management message and on the Canada-U.S. trade message, it won't be a winner, because that's not. I wouldn't say trade policy or even industrial policy is an area that the NDP has typically carved out as their own. So if they're just running against that, trying to come up with an NDP trade policy, an NDP Canada-U.S. policy, I don't know that that will work as well as thinking about, okay, what are the other things Canadians want? Maybe Carney can handle this. What can we handle? How can we handle affordability? What do you want to see in your community? And I think it will be really incumbent on Jagmeet Singh to not just play the air war in this election. He's an excellent campaigner. He is a very likable person. He does not seem to be able to punch through in the media dialogue at all at the moment. So I think his best bet is to really focus on other issues domestically that need attention for Canadians, and also spend a lot of time connecting in communities.
Anthony, I've been dying to ask you on your take, because the Conservatives' position on this has been like, a fire this week with Corey Teneycke, the campaign manager for Doug Ford. You know him, I know him. He's a panelist on Question Period, for example, kind of publicly saying the Conservatives are not on the right track here. They're in big trouble, releasing internal polling from Ford's office, for example, to that effect. Tell me how you're perceiving that, and where you think the Conservatives sit on the Trump issue. Like, is it a challenge? Is it an opportunity? What's your take?
Well, listen, it's not a conservative general election campaign if there aren't Conservatives from the sidelines who are issuing criticisms in a very public way. We're sort of accustomed to that. But there's no doubt that for a lot of Canadians, the threats that are coming from the president down south, whether they're on tariffs or making it the 51st state, are on top of mind for a lot of people. And I think this is where you got to start asking the tough questions, which is, why are we so weak in face of the United States of America today compared to where we should be? And that's because we suffered a decade of the lost Liberal decade of horrible policies. But beyond that, I do think there is a conversation to be had here, not only about what we're facing right now from the United States of America, but also making sure that we have the kind of policies put in place by our next government such that Canada will never again find ourselves on our knees the way we find ourselves today in face of threats from any foreign leader from any country at any point, whether it be economic or otherwise. But I think at the end of the day, you have to look at this, right? The Liberal strategy has basically been, up until now, hide Mark Carney and hope that Donald Trump makes the news. And the Conservatives have been actually, in addition to addressing the concerns of everyday Canadians, actually laying out a quite substantive policy platform with at least one policy a day, talking about the kind of things they're going to do to make life more affordable and better for Canadians. So definitely there's a conversation that needs to be go around. Donald Trump definitely put a tailspin on this campaign Nobody was expecting to have these kind of conversations 3 months ago. But I think some people are a little bit too quick on the pedal here. We got 30 days left to go before showtime. And there's plenty of more policies and ideas that are set to come out here. And at the end of the day, I don't think Canadians are sold on who's the best person to face Donald Trump now, tomorrow, or any other leader for that matter moving forward.
Mohammed, I'll give you the floor to respond to what Anthony just laid out.
Look, I mean, I think the Conservatives are trying to throw anything in the kitchen sink at the wall right now to try and get the attention, because they're fundamentally struggling on the fundamental issue that is impacting Canadians and are on Canadians' mind. How do you deal with Donald Trump? Who's best positioned to make Canada resilient so that we're not so dependent on the U.S., but also can protect our industry and grow it and diversify it? I mean, Mark Carney has talked about that. He also has a resume. People are also attracted to that, not attracted to someone who's been a career politician. Who's got sound bites and slogans, right? Like, so I think the convenience of the Conservatives to say like they have a robust plan, I think it's them trying to find anything and, you know, poking at like an Oxford PhD thesis paper as being, you know, plagiarized or something. I mean, they're simply validating the credentials of Mark Carney, saying that he is a highly educated individual. He is well experienced. He has an ability to deal in crisis. And Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives just don't, because they don't even know how to deal with their own crisis of not knowing what to do in an election.